Hello, everyone. Welcome to NJ AI Solution Podcast, where we turn AI into real business results. I'm your host, Nikunj Thakur, founder of NJ AI Solution. Really excited for today's conversation. I'm joined by Brian Johnson, co founder of DeepM AI. Brian brings 17 years of Amazon and e-com expertise of building AI tools that help Amazon and e-com seller optimize product research, competitive intelligence, and ad strategy through search rank intelligence tools.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you here. So let's dive in.
Okay.
Brian, could you share more about how your journey began with DeepM AI and what inspired you to solve challenges specific to e-commerce?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned in the opening there, is that I've been in the e-commerce space for 17 years now. So I've had a few software and community training advertising agency companies that I've exited, some of those. And those all led into, solving the next problem, right? Once there's a certain amount of like I kind of look at it from a standpoint of like what's the the phrase that the blue ocean, and that is there's less competition. Maybe there's a lot of unsolved problems that need some kind of guidance, and somebody has to step in and say, you know what, nobody's got a very good answer on this, or I think I can do better. And that's how I came in, at least certainly to the Amazon space, and I saw where advertising was confusing to me, and so I was determined to figure it out. And I realized that all my same questions and concerns and frustrations everybody else had as well, and nobody was really providing good answers, no good tools. And so I think it was more of there's a cartoon movie that says "See a need, fill a need" comment, and that was exactly it. It's like I saw where like okay, nobody else seems to be answering this properly, or there's got to be a better way. That's usually a signal to you. It always is to me that maybe I should do something about it. Maybe I should be the one that actually brings something. It doesn't have to be perfect. That would be a mistake I constantly make is trying to get to perfection. But if I can, get paid somehow in order to add value, to a lot of other people, then the journey is worth it.
What process did you use to find the solution? Because there would be a lot of testing to find what works and what doesn't work. So was there any particular procedure that you used?
Well, I mean, through the advertising, the training, and the advertising agency and the software, I mean, in my journey in the Amazon space, I've helped brands grow their sales on Amazon by over $3.5 billion. So quite a bit of data to work with, quite a bit of experience there. And so that kind of depth and experience allowed me to see a lot of the what worked, what didn't, a much wider perspective, saw where a lot of the problems were. And ultimately, my focus was originally on the advertising standpoint, but it kept coming back to like, there's got to be a better way because I know because every ad platform is going to do the same thing, the prices are going to continue to go higher and higher. It's going to get more and more expensive to run ads. And so, I was kind of looking at like, okay, what's the cheaper way? What's the better way? What's the part that's not really so well solved? That happened to be organic search ranking on the Amazon marketplace. And so I knew that if I had more data, then I would be able to figure out how it worked, reverse engineer how the algorithm works, and maybe come up with a solution that was better than advertising or other solutions that were out there. And sure enough, I was able to connect with the right partner. Just so, he reached out to me, so it wasn't something where I think I was lucky in that case, but I was lucky because I had put myself out there for, 10 years, into the community. So that's, partially luck, partially just visibility. But I found somebody who was able to give me, all the data that I wanted and to build a deep learning AI system that could analyze all that data, something that just wasn't feasible for humans. And that allowed us to create DeepM, which is essentially a platform that reverse engineers the Amazon search algorithm and then specifically measures the competitors against the seller product and say, okay, here's what you need to do in order to influence the search algorithm so that you can rank higher than your competitors. And so I always knew what I wanted to accomplish. I wanted to win. I wanted to rank higher. I wanted to have higher visibility. It just required a considerable amount of experimentation. We've spent the last 2 years building that to try to get it right.
So does DeepM uses keyword analysis and analyzes keyword for better SEO ranking, right?
Sort of, yeah. So SEO is certainly one of those aspects. We also look at promotions. We look at the category that products are in. A lot of what we're looking at is where are products focused. You can't be visible for every single search term that's relevant to your product. You've got to pick your battle. You've got to pick, maybe 5 to 10 search terms that you really can go after, but also be able to see, and that's what DeepM gives, is be able to see where are those weak spots in the competition. They're not focused, they're not well optimized for their content, for their promotions, for their price, for their reviews, whatever the case is. They're not well enough optimized, and so it provides an easier opportunity for me to pass them in search rank. So yeah, SEO is definitely part of it. Now that's evolving into the GEO and the AEO with the language models and AI search and all that kind of stuff. But it's always evolving.
So talking about the AI, at what point did you realize that AI could transform how seller approach product research and advertising?
Mostly we use it from a tool from a standpoint of we had developed our deep learning model prior to when the language like ChatGPT, before those even came out, we had developed this. And so it was out of necessity. We were pulling in um, tens of thousands of data points and then using the deep learning model in order to do 30 to 40 million calculations and analysis. You can't do that with a human team. 30 to 40 million data analysis points, I guess. 30 to 40 million considerations would take 30,000 to 40,000 man hours. That's just not feasible for any brand, consumer product brand team to do. So it was out of necessity. It's like it's not physically possible for a human team to do that. It's not reasonable.
So Brian, can you elaborate more on how DeepM AI works and how it helps how it helps?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we take a look at a client's product niche, so their product and they sell it on Amazon and they're surrounded by other products. And we go out and we collect all the search terms that are relevant to their product and to their niche. And we go in and we crawl all of the Amazon search. Sometimes that's, 300 competitors deep. We look at every aspect of how they're promoting, how they have their listing set up, what their price is, what their review rating is, what their comment feedback is, or review feedback is. I mean, there's over 100 different things that we look at for every single product listing that they're competing with, so that we understand. We create this situational awareness. Essentially, what we do is we create a benchmark on all of those factors. First of all, we figure out what is most important to the Amazon search algorithm. And that varies from one product niche to another, where somebody might call a product niche, like I say, a subcategory, for instance, or a product category. And that varies. One product category does not influence the search algorithm the same way that another one does. And that some of that has to do with, maybe it's a commodity. And so it's a commodity like a paper towels, and therefore price is going to typically win out more than, say, content, for instance, or review count. But in something like a luxury watch, for instance, they don't care about the price as much. They care about what are the review feedbacks, is the content. They're going to spend a lot more time reviewing the content, reviewing the reviews. And so review rating and quantity are going to make a much bigger impact to the consumer. And therefore, Amazon's search algorithm is smart enough to recognize what the consumer behavior is and say, okay, in this product category, we know what is going to satisfy the consumer. Therefore, it's going to affect how products are ranked. We figured that out. We decoded that. And now we can go back and the brands, look, your title is the most important content field. And it has a 25% influence on the search algorithm. And your bullet points, your descriptors are, maybe a 15% impact. And the number of units that you sell every single week, that has a 14% impact. And so we boil those 100 down to maybe the top 10 or 12 and say, okay, this is where you need to focus your attention on, as well as here is where your competitors are weak and you are strong. And therefore, if you just optimize according to what you're strong, like all like we all should do personally, lean into what your
Like
strength
basically,
is.
like SWOT analysis, focus on your
Yeah, kind of.
strengths. Yeah,
Yeah, I like to use the term superpower. Some people call that zone of genius. It's more of, from a person standpoint, it's get away from the things that drag you down, that burn your energy, that don't excite you, that you typically try to avoid. You need to get those away from you as quick as possible. Focus on the things that you feel energized by. The same thing goes with ranking a product on Amazon. Figure out what you are best at to the consumer with your product in the search compared to your competitors. Go heavy on that. Go lean into that. Optimize your content, optimize your promotions to that power, to that strength, and get rid of the stuff where you're weak on. Stop trying to chase some high volume search term just because it has high volume search term and you think there's perceived value. If it doesn't reflect that in the way that your product performs on that search term, you got to get rid of it. It's just noise.
so DeepM AI helps sellers gather data, do product research. In this fast-changing market, how do you think data helps in making strategies?
How does data help with strategy?
Strategies, yeah.
Man, it affects everything because it's not perfect. There's nothing perfect about AI. It's not just going to be a magic tool that just does everything for you. You still have to learn how to talk to the AI, the language models. The language models are extremely powerful because they really understand human language. They're often better copywriters than most people. They are better at identifying alternative language, synonyms, and what they call semantic exchange words and that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of technical terms for it. Anytime you are trying to promote something, sell something, whether it's yourself or a product or a service, the language model is usually going to be able to craft. You always want to tune it to be in your voice, but you don't want to, you want to at least have a conversation periodically with language models because they've gotten so smart. Not only does it give a tremendous value for those who learn how to use the language models. My recommendation to my family and friends is you better be using a language model every single day, because if you don't, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage to those who are actively using it, at least understand how to use it when they need it for something.
Yeah,
I plan out whole marketing strategies and launch strategies and go to market and service proposal strategies. One of the things that I like to do actually is I'll take, if there, let's say for instance, there are 10 thought leaders on social media, on YouTube, whatever, that I have respect for, that maybe I follow. The Dan Martell and Alex Hermosi and, some of these guys. I will tell something like a language model, ChatGPT as an example. I say, okay, create a panel for me of these 10 people, Dan Martell, Alex Hermosi, whoever, and give me feedback and ask me questions one at a time in order to help me to create and to think through and refine whatever my strategy is, whether it's marketing or product development or whatever the case is. I'll ask it to put in the context of whoever I respect as a thought leader and say, give it to me the way they would tell me, as if they were on an executive panel.
in today's time, it is essential to learn AI because if you don't learn AI, you lose competitive edge. AI will not replace human. People using AI will, right?
Yes and no. I mean, let's be honest. The AI is getting smart enough where it can start creating its own automation. It's going to get to the point where we transition to where the AI is creating its own automation and making better AI itself. And so that was a nice thought is, yeah, somebody using AI is going to beat you, not AI itself. But the fact is that so many people who are using AI are becoming reliant on AI and language models, and therefore, really, who's in control? The person or the AI? So I think there's an argument to be made that says, like, yeah, there was a nice thought to say somebody who's using AI as a way of encouraging people to go out and to learn it. And I absolutely recommend that everybody really should be using at least, I mean, I've got ChatGPT on my phone. I use that thing 10 times a day. I don't suggest you need to do it that much, but I've learned how to use it. I learned where it can accelerate what I do. I will do it both from a not just content creation or coming up with a checklist or something, as far as my day. I will teach it. I will have it interview me and say, okay, what are your strengths and weaknesses, Brian? It'll walk through and I'll spend 2 days having this conversation so that it helps me to refine what are my superpowers, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and it helps me create a framework that sets boundaries for any new projects that come along. I can say, okay, assess this new project. Here's what's going on. I got this new partnership deal with a product, brand. Do I take this on? And it'll come back and say, you could, but it's a distraction from these other things. And frankly, you're not going to, Brian, you're just not going to do well on this particular one. Don't do it. It helps me avoid so much stress because a lot of people say yes too often. So this helps me create it's almost like having a bodyguard, that I can ask and say like, well, what do you think? You know, I'll often use it to throw, a big chunk of data. Somebody comes out, with a white paper or research document. I'm not going to read that whole thing. I'm going to throw it into a language model and say, summarize this thing. Yeah, okay, no, you got to dumb it down. Okay, like fourth grade, fifth grade level, like really dumb it down. Okay, cool. Draw me a picture, and I'll learn it like that. Just because it will come down to whatever level that I need it to. I'm actually trying to learn things as far as like quantum physics and stuff. Man, I mean, I was a physics major, but quantum mechanics and that kind of stuff, it's way over my head. But if I take a concept like that and I ask us like, okay, not only summarize this, but teach it to me. Okay, you got to dumb this down. Bring it down to my level, where I'm educated, but I got to be honest, fourth, fifth grade level, it's really easy to read and understand. It just goes right in.
So, from your experience, what's one common challenge that e-com owners face, and how do you think technology or AI can help with it?
Most e-commerce, they get in their own way. They get caught up in politics of things like tariffs. They don't just solve the problem that's in front of them. It's they put walls up to say I can't do something or somebody stopped me or somebody else is to blame. The true entrepreneur is going to solve that problem themselves. And they're going to work day and night in order to figure out how to work around that problem. They're not going to just give up. And I think that's unfortunately there's a difference in personality between those who are entrepreneurs. You can train yourself to get that way, but most people that are coming out of the desk job world, that worked in cubicles their whole life, for instance, they're going to struggle initially, and that's one of the reasons why like honestly, I mean I mean, you could ask a friend, you could ask for advice, you can search through YouTube videos, but honestly, I mean, it's just too easy to go into a Chat GPT or a Claude or a Grok or something like that and just say like, how should I ask this question? Here's my concern. How should I approach this? What do I need to know? What am I missing? How do I come up with a solution in the next 2 days that what are my options as far as like how to solve this problem? Whatever it is, whether it's e-commerce or anything else, it is, it's not perfect, but man, it's so fast. So fast.
So, let's take a hypothetical scenario. Someone is trying entrepreneurship for the first time. They are new into this world and they have a very small team and they have a bunch of tasks to do. So, how they should prioritize tasks, what they should go for first.
I mean, in e-commerce, anytime you are creating something that you want to sell, service, product, right? You need to understand who you're selling it to and why. Why do they even want it? Like, what is their need? What is their pain point? Why would they even pay you money for it, right? Because if you don't design the product or service to fit their need, if you don't push it out and market it to people in a way that they understand and they believe that you understand their pain because you studied it, again, the language models are really good at this kind of stuff. You've got to pre-sell it. You've got to think about the end user that you're selling it to. I make the mistake constantly of like, if I build it, they will come. I've got this genius idea for a software, for a system, for training, whatever the case is. And then I go out and after I'm all done, I hope that somebody buys it. It's the absolute wrong way to go. You pre-sell it. You find people and say, hey, you know what? I'm in the process of developing this kind of a product, this kind of a service, this kind of thing. Can I get your feedback? Can I get your input? Why would this matter? You're not selling to them. You're asking them what their pain is and do they already have a solution on how to solve it? Maybe that solution's already out there and you just don't know.
So, for example, there is a solution, but there is a lot of competitors in our surrounding. So, how one should be above that competition, you know?
Yeah, I
How
mean,
one
there's
can
always
approach.
competitors. Yeah, there's always
Yeah.
competitors. There's concepts as far as like saturation where there's too many competitors, but and the novice approach is, well, I'll just give it away for free or I'll have it cheaper. And that's the absolute wrong way to go. You absolutely should come back and say like, what would I need to create here where I could charge twice as much as everybody else? What would it
For
need to
that,
be?
you should have one USP, you know, unique selling point, that this is the reason why I'm better from the competitors, right?
You got to have your differentiator. You've got to differentiate. You got to lean into the same thing we're talking about. If I'm strong at something, I need to lean into that. If I'm weak at it, I need to get it away from me, right? Not even bring it up. And so when it comes to a product, a service, a solution, that's part of why, I like an approach that the thought leader Alex Hormozy says about this is like, if you're not willing to go out and talk to 100 people before you start selling that product, don't do it. Don't waste your time. Don't waste their time. You've got to get out there and actually have conversations. Don't think that you're the super genius who's got some magical thing that everybody wants. Find out. Have those conversations and say like, is this missing? Would this solve your problem? What would it have to be in order to be twice the price of whatever's on the market right now?
So
You know,
basically, gather
and
as much data as you can.
yeah, it's a huge grind, and I know that there's plenty of people who would hear that and say like, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. I would do that, right? In other words, I wouldn't go out and so I would resist going out and reaching out to 100. But if you're not even willing to talk to 10 people, you're not going to get this thing off the ground.
So
But if you really want to be a success at whatever it is, you need to be able to talk to 100 people and get 100 people to say, not just, not friends and family, but people who would actually be your target audience.
audience,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because friends and family will always pat you on the back and say, good job, keep going. Well, or tear you down. It depends on the family, right? But it's your target audience who's going to come back. It's like, look, I don't have any really use for that. That's not a problem for me. I've got this other problem. You get all of a sudden you're interviewing, 100 people and 20% it's like, no, I don't have that. That's not a priority for me. I got this other problem. It's like, well, how are you solving that other problem? Oh, I just learned about a new problem.
So, what advice would you share with a founder looking to scale their business?
You got to get visibility. You got to get, there's the idea of like say product market fit, and the product market fit is understanding what that your target audience wants, and then being able to deliver that. And it's not just to say like, oh, well, I came up with a new color of this widget of this product. It's got to be in demand, and sometimes that's, maybe there's a certain, slice of a much larger audience that wants something very unique, very specific, and you can market specifically to them that nobody else has. You can create something that is custom, or not necessarily customized, but tailored more toward that broad audience. I wouldn't go into one-off custom. That would be no. But scaling, it's not about having the perfect product. I made that mistake way too many times. It is about you've got to get visibility on it. You've got to face the rejection and you've got to learn from it and adapt, because you will adapt whatever it is you're bringing to market. You will adapt it based off the feedback that you get. And if you don't ask that feedback, you'll never grow, you'll never scale, you'll never get past the first 6 months of the startup if you're not out there constantly reaching out and talking and having conversations with your target audience and just saying, look, I don't want to sell you anything. I just want to get your opinion about something I'm thinking of developing or that we're trying to get to market. I just want your opinion. It's, doesn't have to be difficult.
What's one thing you're most excited to launch in the next 6 to 12 months? It can be anything, new product, service, or anything else. And what are the challenges that are holding you back right now?
I mean, a lot of times I've got, just there's so many of us wear so many hats and we can use it as an excuse or we can manage it. I take care of quite a bit of the care coordination for my family and my parents and that takes up, several hours every week, and that's, and I could be, that's just something that it just happens. I just have to work around it. And so I have to focus in and limit how many projects that I'm running concurrently. Much better if I'm focusing in on one project and doing really well at that and focusing on what that particular project, that business needs. And so from a startup standpoint, it's going to be more of not necessarily a new startup, but rather an expansion of what we already have, developing the technology further, pushing the boundaries, creating a bigger differentiator, a bigger gap between us and everything else, every other solution that's on the market. By constantly trying and failing and trying and failing and testing and failing and researching and failing, and then finally coming up with something that our target audience actually wants and gets excited about. Once they get excited about it, I'm absolutely excited about it. That'll drive me to wake up every single morning, just like I get to work on this because I know somebody wants what I'm building.
And what are the challenges that are holding you back right now?
So noise, it is making sure that I don't have distractions, that I am blocking out large chunks of time as much as I can. And sometimes that means that I can't watch TV. Sometimes it means I've got to skip going to the gym. Sometimes that means that, frankly, I'll skip a meal, or two. Sometimes that means is that I've got to close the door and I've got to put a sign on the door handle and say, look, sorry, family, I need to finish this thing, because I've got a home office, So I've got to I've got to get the phone away from me. I've got to turn off email notifications. I've got to limit my what's in my view, set a timer and say, this is what I'm working on, and I've got to finish this in the next 30 minutes. So I highly distracted. A lot of us are easily distracted by our devices, by our phones, or, whatever. You've got to get that away from you. For me, that's probably the biggest thing is just to limit the noise so that I can focus in on what absolutely needs to get done. And it's hard. It's hard every single time. It's hard. But I continue to train myself, and I know that I've been working on this for the past 2 years, and I'll work on it for the next 2 years. Just constantly trying to get better and better at a signal to noise ratio, as Steve Jobs would say.
So obviously you have a lot of knowledge about AI. So are there any tools or trend that you are excited about?
The agents, in order to create a series of tasks, it's still early, but it's an area that I think that if it's applied correctly, can really help. Certainly, the tools are gradually getting better as far as being able to create an app. Use an AI tool in order to create a Chrome extension that'll help me do something faster. Use a tool that'll help me create an agent. Even asking a language model to say, like, help me plan out this Chrome extension, help me plan out what an agent would look like. Like, you're the agent that I want to use. Now tell me how I should create this agent. Like just ask it. It's smart. But yeah, I think the agents that allow you to do multiple tasks in a series and then come back, because eventually what I want to do is I want to be able to have that as I want to have a chief marketing officer that's an AI agent, chief, audience research, person, an accountant, whatever the case, whatever those senior roles are in my organization, I want somebody. I might have a person, but I also want to have an AI
AI, right.
input that comes back. And sometimes that means that they need to, like, hey, here's a problem that I'm presenting, or it's listening in on our conversations or our Slack messages. Go out and figure out what are our options. What's the solution? What's the danger zone? There's
Much.
millions of different things you could do with agents, let alone, but that requires some basic, knowledge and daily use of the language models also.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with the audience. For
Of
any
course.
listener who might want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach out?
I mean, certainly if they're in the Amazon space, definitely look us up at deepm.ai. I'm on LinkedIn, Brian R. Johnson on LinkedIn. That's probably where I spend most of my time.